Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Soul Forge podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vanderloo. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a big congratulations to Daniel Peter Hitch, the guest on the last episode, episode 37, the author interview. On February 27th, his son, Zachary Joseph Hitch, was born at 7:45 in the morning. He was healthy, weighing in at 8 pounds and 7 ounces. So just a great big congratulations to Dan and his family on the birth of their new child. Very happy for you, Dan. Saw the pictures on Facebook and he looks very happy and healthy. In other news, just a reminder, you can always like us on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/soulforgepodcast. Spread the word. And as I like to do, it's time for this week's feature shout out. Wayne Atkins discovers the podcast in May of 2022. However, Wayne did not leave a 5-star review in the iTunes store, but you can. It's always appreciated when our listeners go to the iTunes store and leave a 5-star review. That way, the podcast becomes more discoverable, and we can build a great big community of forgers. So leave a 5-star review today. Thank you. Okay, now I'm not sure how I sound on this episode, folks. I just purchased a brand new microphone. I'm testing it out. I tried it before I recorded this episode here, and it seems to be okay. Hopefully, it sounds just as good to you guys as it does to me here. Don't forget, your feedback is always encouraged. You can email the show, soulforgepodcast@gmail.com. Okay, now all that good stuff is out of the way. What's this week's topic? Well, as many of you know, for the last month or so, I've been trying to get an episode going all about irrational fears. Now, why did I come across this topic? I wish I had a cool story for you, but I can't remember because it's been a month in the making. Remember episode 22 where I did the simple pleasures? Well, I thought we would do something completely opposite. And I'm sure there's a great story behind why I picked irrational fears. However, it's been so long since I thought of this topic, that knowledge, that information has disappeared from my memory banks, which is quite sad. But actually doesn't really matter when it comes right down to it because we've got a lot of clips from people that I know, and you're going to get to know them too on episode 38 of the Soul Forge podcast. All right, so here I am, deep in the heart of the forge, stoking the fires, bringing you this fun episode, and I thought what I should probably do is let you know a little bit about my fears.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Okay, so fears, what are they? Things we're afraid of. And they can be completely justified or they can be irrational. And one of my biggest fears that I've always had is the dark. Is that an irrational fear? I don't know that it is. Seems completely irrational to me. We don't know what's in the dark. For example, when I go down into the basement, I make sure that the kitchen light at the top of the stairs is on before I go down. And when I come back up the stairs, I'm always looking over my shoulder and I have to make sure that the lights are on. Or when I go to bed, I have to have the night light on beside the bed before I turn off the big light. Why? I have no idea. I don't remember being traumatized from anything in the dark when I was a child. But yet, there it is, a completely irrational fear of the dark, even though nothing has ever jumped out and gotten me. But that's not the main irrational fear that I have. When I was giving examples of irrational fear to people that I was going to get these clips from, I chose one of my longest running fears, which is becoming homeless. And it's irrational because I've never been homeless. I've never become close to being homeless. I don't know any homeless people. And yet, for as long as I can remember, whenever I would go into a new city or travel around the country or go on road trips, I would look for places that if I was homeless, I could stay out of the elements and be safe. like bridge underpasses, homeless shelters. Where would I find food? Where would I go to the bathroom? How would I shower? How would I stay safe? Even when I'm delivering the mail, I'll look around. Oh, there's a nice clump of trees with some coverage. I bet I could live there if I had to. And it doesn't make any sense. It's completely irrational. I've got a support system in place. I've got family. I've got friends. I've got a little bit of money saved up. At least enough money for a few nights in a hotel room until I got on my feet or went to a buddy's place or traveled back home to move in with my brother and say, hey, guess what? Here I am. But yet, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a fear that I have.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
All right. And speaking of family, support systems, and whatnot, the first clip you're going to hear is from my brother Curtis. And you will remember him from episode 13. That's the one where he interviewed me during our road trip to Cedar Point last summer, and he asked me all kinds of embarrassing questions. If you guys haven't heard episode 13, check it out. Give yourself a great laugh. It's embarrassing and funny and weird all at the same time. So here is Curtis's irrational fear.
Oh, hey there, this is Curtis Vanderloo, Sean Vanderloo's brother. Sean is the owner and director, I guess, producer and editor and scorer and all those other things of the Soul Forge podcast. He asked me to do a clip of irrational fears, and I don't know if this is necessarily an irrational fear or maybe just a weird quirk that I have, but one of the things that I've always had trouble with, and I've always known it was kind of silly in my head, but still gets me anyway, is wiper blades. I really don't like having my wiper blades on when no one else does. And I also don't like if my wiper blades are faster than somebody else's. So I always make sure my wiper blades are slower, and I try to wait for a gap in traffic before using my wiper blades, particularly on a sunny day, even if I've got some bug splatter or something like that. I always try to wait for nobody to be, I guess, looking. Like I said, it doesn't even matter at all, and I know it doesn't matter, and yet I do it anyway. Not necessarily a fear, but just a weird little quirk that I have, and that's it for me.
And there he is. I never knew that he, and I'm not even sure if that's an irrational fear. It's definitely a quirk, but wiper blades, really? Okay, that's different. I like it. It rounds his personality out a little bit more for me. And there's a meme that reminds me of, actually. It goes something along the lines of, I always feel like people are judging my wiper speed. So the fact that that bugs him, that's interesting. Next up on the list is one of my rotating list of guest hosts on the Rusted Robot podcast that I also do. This is Sarah, and here is her fear.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I am irrationally afraid of moths. And it's irrational because they don't really do anything. But when I was little, I used to have a reading light that would attach to my ear, and they would fly at my face at night when I was supposed to be sleeping and I wasn't.
And I can understand being afraid of moths. It makes sense. They're creepy, they're gross. You see them going around street lights and flames and fire and all kinds of stuff. And I guess I could see being afraid of them, especially if they caught on fire and were coming towards you or something. That would be pretty scary. Not a fear that I've ever had. Also, the same thing with the wipers. I've never been afraid of those either. But, yeah, they're understandable. They're irrational. Makes sense to me. Okay, now here is a guy that I deliver the mail to at a place of business.
My name is Ryan Barrett, and my irrational fear is ice fishing, because I don't believe that people were meant to walk on water, whether it be frozen or not, period.
And yeah, being afraid of being on the ice. That makes sense to me. It should actually also make sense to my brother Curtis, because when we were kids, our dad took us ice fishing, and Curtis fell in one of the holes. So that would be something to be afraid of. I get it. Just have to make sure that you're not on really thin ice, I guess, Ryan. You have to be careful about that.
I've known fear. It's a very healthy thing most of the time.
Okay, and speaking of falling into the ice or ice cracking or whatever, Amanda, who is one of the ladies that I deliver to on my mailman route, has a fear as well.
Hi, my name's Amanda, and my most irrational fear is swimming in dark water. Sharks, dead bodies, man-eating fish. Sure, it's a man-made lake with no access to any oceans, rivers, or streams, but in my head, it can still happen.
Swimming in the dark. Yeah, makes total sense. You don't know what's in the dark. I'm afraid of the dark. And swimming is even worse. And the fact that I can't swim very well, I can certainly get behind this fear. You don't know what's there. You're swimming along and you look behind you and there's a great big shark or something coming to get you, or a fish, or maybe there's a dead body floating by. You don't know what's happening. It's pretty freaky.
If you are loving this podcast, you should tell a friend about it.
Spread the word about podcasts you think they would enjoy. There's something for everyone, from entertainment and lifestyle
to news and politics
and more. Share it on social media. Believe it or not, some people don't know how great podcasts are,
or even how to find and listen to them.
You can help change that with a click. Tell your friends about your favorite podcast.
Thanks for spreading the word.
And speaking of things that are freaky fears, Dan, who was the guest on last week's episode, congratulations once again on the birth of Zachary, Dan. He's got a fear as well.
Hi, I'm Dan. My irrational fear is sinkholes. Ever since I saw a news report that a sinkhole just suddenly opened up in America, I've had an irrational fear of them. And ever since, I keep on thinking I'll just be walking down the road and something will just appear.
Sinkholes. Yeah, especially here in Timmins. We're a mining community, and sinkholes have been known to open up from time to time. And yeah, that's pretty scary. I've never come across one or fallen into one, but you see cracks in the pavement, you see the deep holes. It's you got to be careful. So yeah, Dan, makes sense to me. All right, here's a common fear that people have. This one is from Jamie, who works with Ryan at one of the places of business.
Hi, my name is Jamie, and my irrational fear is spiders because once I was in a bathroom and got bit on the eye and my eye was swollen for a week.
Yeah, spiders, Jamie. I get it. Spiders are creepy. They've got a lot of legs and a lot of eyes, and the cobwebs and stuff. Yeah.
Fear is the most honest of all emotions.
Actually, a lot of people, when I was bringing this topic up to them to get the recordings, did say spiders were a fear of theirs. So that's very common. Actually, another common fear is being recorded for a podcast. You would not think that, but it's true. I don't know how many people I asked. I must have asked 30 or 40 people, and they wouldn't do it. They're like, oh, my voice doesn't sound right, or I don't have any fears, or oh, my fears are rational. They're not irrational. I can't be on your podcast. I just don't like the sound of my voice. So that's pretty common. So actually, this episode could have been a heck of a lot longer, but people were afraid to be recorded. So this is what we're getting this week. But I do have more. I've got an irrational fear from Shane, who is also one of the regular list of co-hosts on the Rested Robot podcast. And Shane actually is dating Sarah, who is afraid of moths. So here's Shane's fear.
Hi, my name's Shane, and my irrational fear is walking past doorways in the dark. I know nothing's in there, but I can't see that. There could be. There could be anything in there. I don't know. But there's probably not, so it's okay.
Yeah, doorways and the darkness. Darkness is a common theme. And you're right, Shane. You don't know what's in the doorway. What's in the doorway? You don't know because it's dark. You can't tell. And there could be anything. There could be a mugger. There could be a murderer. There could be a ghost. We don't know because it's dark. So yeah, I understand that fear. Oh, look, who else do we have here? We have Colleen, who is also somebody that I deliver the mail to at a place of business. So let's see what Colleen has to say.
Hi, my name's Colleen, and my irrational fear is ghost sharks. Because most of the world used to be covered in ocean, and you can't tell me that sharks didn't die there. And what's scarier than a ghost? A ghost with 3 rows of teeth. I think it's actually pretty rational if you think about it, but I've been told it's irrational.
And this was a fun one. Ghost sharks. That's right, because most of the world has been underwater. She's completely right. And yeah, sharks and other kinds of sea creatures did die there. Do they have ghosts? We don't know. Have you ever been haunted by a ghost shark? Maybe you have and you just don't know it. That's pretty imaginative. I like it a lot. It's fun. Way to go. And then I've got a coworker named Kevin, and he's got a fear. And in fact, I actually recorded him twice. Once last week and once yesterday. And both the same fear, so I'm not sure which recording I'm going to play. Maybe I'll play both. So here goes.
My fear would be helicopters, and I think it's a rational fear because what goes up must come down. There's no glide to those things, so I'm brainstorming, trying to think of what the heck scares me, and helicopters scare me above anything, I think. Hi, my name's Kevin McKay, and my irrational fear would be going up in a helicopter. It's just not safe. Planes can glide, helicopters is not much glide to a helicopter, so they're a little terrifying. So yeah, I would never go up in one. Not scared of anything else though.
And yeah, that was Kevin, and he's afraid of helicopters because that's not a logical kind of mode of transportation. And he's right. A plane, if it loses an engine, can glide. It's true. A helicopter, it doesn't have any wings. It can't glide. It's just going to fall like a rock from the sky. I've never been in a helicopter, so I can't really say if that's true or not. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know stuff. But anyway, I understand. Okay, and now we have Kitty.
This is Kitty from Jump City Comics, and you're listening to the Soul Forge podcast. Forge your soul.
Who is also one of the rotating list of guest hosts on the Rusted Robot podcast.
My name is Kitty, and I am irrationally afraid of mirrors. Because I'm afraid that my mirror self will crawl out of the mirror and take over my life, or that while I'm looking in a mirror, something will appear in the reflection that is not actually there, or that something who is actually there will not appear in the mirror, or that the mirror image will move on its own without me moving. There's just too many scary things about mirrors.
And she's afraid of mirrors. I've seen movies where mirrors are creepy, so I can understand her fear. Makes total sense to me. I've never had that fear myself, but it makes sense.
How do I defeat fear? The only way to defeat fear is to tell it no. No. We will not take shortcuts on the path to righteousness. No. We will not break the rules that protect us from our basest instincts. No. We will not allow desperation to destroy moral authority.
Okay, and who do we have next? Well, we have Josh. And who's Josh? He's my main co-host and the husband of Kitty. So what's he afraid of? Let's find out.
Hi, my name is Josh. My irrational fear is when you work all night alone and you leave work and you don't see anybody for your entire walk home, that, am I really the last man on earth? No, there's got to be people around. And I know it's irrational because people still exist, but it still comes up every so often.
So yeah, okay. I've been there. You're out late at night and there's nobody else around, and the lights are out, or it's really quiet and you don't hear any birds chirping or crickets or anything. And yeah, you could feel like the last person on Earth. That's definitely a fear. That's fun. I like it. I can get behind it, Josh. Way to go. And one final clip. It's a longer one. It's from my other brother, Robin, who co-hosts the Space Jam podcast, and you've also heard him on a previous episode, I think episode 36 actually, and a little bit on episode 13 and here and there throughout.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So let's see what Robin has to say.
Hey everyone, on the Soul Forge podcast, this is Brother Robin from the Space Jam podcast, and I've been here on the old Soul Forge a couple of times. You may have heard all about the traumatic childhoods that we all shared and whatnot. And on this episode, I was asked by good brother Sean what my irrational fear or fears are. And to be quite honest, I don't have really a lot. I have an irrational fear of earwigs, because they're creepy, crawly, little bastards. I have a fear to hornets and wasps. It's irrational, but they're just little jerks, and will come at you for just existing. All right? So I have a real big irrational fear of ever an earwig reproducing with a wasp or a hornet. and having to deal with that type of creature. That's my irrational fear. But I also have an irrational fear of never having any more cheese, because then I can't make rachos. That's a pretty big irrational fear, though. Who doesn't love cheese? Cheese is fantastic, and it goes with everything. I would fear losing cheese. Wouldn't you? Come on. I think you would. No, that's really about all. Like, I don't have any irrational fears. I don't fear nothing because I've been through pretty much all of it. So, to walk on the other side of fear and almost be like the man without fear himself, Daredevil, you gotta just embrace everything that you've been through, and you come out strong on the other side, fists still clenched, ready to go, where every day you get up and you quote your best Steve Rogers. I can do this all day, while you're getting the living crap kicked out of you. So, really, this was a very awakening journey on the Soul Forge podcast. I looked within deep and really realized that my fears are very irrational. Sure, there's reasons to them, but if my fears, irrational ones at that, to come alive tomorrow, I'd panic a little bit, but I'd still get out on the other side of it, I think. You know, unless these Hornet earwig crossovers are like 50 feet long and they're gigantic and there's an army of them, well, then I think we're all SOL and JWF. Alright, that'll conclude it for me here. Keep it real. Keep it locked here to the Soul Forge. But of course, come for an unexplained journey into mystery with me and my co-host Wit on the Space Jam podcast. And find us at the Space Jam podcast on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. All right. Until next time.
All right, that was a rather long clip, Robin, and it was kind of rambly. I don't know if you were drunk or not, but it was certainly entertaining. So you're afraid of earwigs, you're afraid of wasps and hornets, you're afraid of them breeding together and making a ear hornet wasp thing, and then you also said you're afraid of running out of cheese for your rachos. Now, not everybody knows who you are, so I'm going to explain to our listening audience that rachos are the nachos that you eat when you're watching Raw, which is some kind of wrestling show on Monday nights. WWE Raw, I think it's called. I don't really know. It's your thing. I don't watch it. You always talk about it. So there you go. That's the fears that people have. Very interesting.
You know as well as I do that fear only exists for one purpose: to be conquered.
So just to finish up, back in the early days of the Soul Forge podcast, I used to do a lot of Googling and getting information. So I'm going to just finish off with some Google stuff here. And I looked up irrational fears, and it tells me almost everyone has an irrational fear or two, of mice, for example, or your annual dental checkup. For most people, these fears are minor, but when fears become so severe that they cause tremendous anxiety and interfere with your normal life, they're called phobias. So that has been episode 38 of the Soul Forge podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a quick rundown of things that I'd appreciate if you did. Join the Facebook page, facebook.com/soulforgepodcast, or whatever it is. It's under Soul Forge Podcast, under groups. All the links to all the episodes are there. If you could share them and like the page, that would be fantastic. If you could leave a 5-star review in the iTunes store, that would be awesome. Or whatever pod-catching service that you use. It doesn't have to be iTunes. It could be Podbean. It could be, well, I don't even know what the other ones are, but if you're listening on them, leave a 5-star review. It's appreciated. Or however many stars you can. What else can I ask you guys to do? So that's join the Facebook page, leave the 5-star reviews, tell your friends about us, or about me, about the show. Email me. What topics would you like me to bring up or discuss? Do you want more personal kinds of stories? Do you like it when I interview people or have a guest host? I was actually just reading something the other day about how a lot of people don't like listening to solo hosted podcasts because it's almost like verbal masturbation, they called it. It's just somebody talking to themselves. And that gave me a great idea for another podcast. I could call it Verbal Masturbation Theater. I don't think I'm going to do it, but that title is there for you. If anybody wants to start a podcast and call it that, I think it would be great. I would listen. So anyway, that's all I got for now. Thanks for stopping by The Forge. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading. Definitely appreciate it. And remember,
fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
This has been another episode of the Soul Forge Podcast. Contact the show by emailing soulforgepodcast@gmail.com or by tweeting soulforgepod on Twitter. Visit us at soulforgepodcast.com, and remember, the best way to show your support is by leaving a 5-star review in the iTunes Store. And, if you would, please check us out and like us on Facebook. The Soul Forge Podcast was written, produced, scored, edited, engineered, and directed by Sean Vanderloo. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Darth Vaderloo. For more great content, you can listen to my other podcast, The Rusted Robot. Thanks for stopping by The Forge. We'll keep the fires lit until your next visit.
I could do this all day.
Do you like movies? Do you like TV?
Do you like discussing the temporal effects of non-linear time travel and its implication on the plot of the movie Looper?
Okay. Do you enjoy the latest in pop culture news? Do you enjoy superheroes?
Do you enjoy discussing the relative merits of superpowers and their effects on human physiology?
Anyways, if you enjoy these things, even a small amount, you'll love the Rusted Robot Podcast.
Find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Subscribe so you never miss an episode.
TheRustedRobot.podbean.com